Welcome to the Socially Numb Podcast. I am your host, Richie Leahy. After last week's initial podcast, this is the first full podcast I'm doing, the full variety show. What I'm going to do is I'm going to touch on different topics. I had the website set up to use these topics as a menu, but I went away from that, and now I think I'm going to use tags or categories. But basically, here's a rundown of how the show is going to work. I have a couple different top-level categories that tie in with the sociallynumb.com website. These categories I'm going to touch on each week, whether it be I just see something, I hear something like watch a TV show, I go to see a music show, something like that. There are going to be different categories that I'm going to touch on. I'm not sure if the structure of the show is going to change, but what I'm going to try to figure out is I'm going to put hot links, or at least time indicators, on when each topic is going to start. So if you're not interested in one topic, feel free to go ahead and skip it, but don't throw away the whole show. Come back for more, even if you're only listening to one of the categories. That is fine with me. Send me your feedback, send me your suggestions, and we will go through and touch on that. The only topic that I'm not going to touch on the Socially Numb podcast is parenting. I decided to break that out into its own separate podcast. So I'm going to start a podcast, which I already started, called Dad Strength, which basically talks about parenting, my experiences and things like that. Because I figure most people, it's not a topic that everyone's going to be into. Even if you're casually listening to, if you don't have kids, you don't know anyone that has kids, or if you don't like kids, that's a very dividing topic. So I decided to break that out into its own podcast. So the very first topic that I'm going to follow up with, probably going to go with every week, is the trending news. Last week I spoke about the gas shortage. Now, I said I lived around the Raleigh, North Carolina area. There was a gas shortage based on a pipe that broke down in Alabama. I touched on it last week, and they have the bypass installed, or at least they had it installed last week. Some gas still hasn't reached our area. It's a little different, something that I've never come across, but some gas stations only have a couple pumps active, and you can tell if you drive through, you see like yellow bags, but on about half the pumps. But it's something that they have been picking up on. So now I have seen more and more gas in the area. It is something that I didn't really see across the news as being newsworthy. It's something just kind of odd because it affects a lot of people. So I had to go to social media and try to find out, like, hey, is certain gas stations selling gas? I did hear that there are 2 that were going to be under investigation in this area, in the North Carolina area. I'm not sure about the other eastern states, but I do know that our governor here put on a state of emergency, and they were having people look out or try to report anyone who thought that they might just be price gouging or trying to raise the prices due to the gas shortage. So that's a little local trend for you. Another trend specific to North Carolina, of course, are the Charlotte protests that happened over the weekend. Not much to say here. A lot of activists going out protesting. I stand behind protesting. That's fine with me. I don't like to see looting. I saw that someone took to looting the Charlotte Hornets merchandise store, which I don't see what that accomplishes, but you're going to always have some of that whenever there's a lot of mass people, which get a lot of the police force and a lot of the other media attention drawn away from certain areas. So that also happened in North Carolina. That did catch a lot of the big headlines. And so that's going to come up, and we'll see what comes of that. There are some other types of protests that have been going on across the United States, and we'll have to see what happens in the next couple weeks due to that. And the last bit of news, of course, the big one, the presidential debates are Monday, which is when I release this. So there are big debates going on. It's going to be a turning point, either because there hasn't been a debate and we're starting to see a lot of those commercials on the negative ones, someone's talking the other candidate down, or vice versa, which is, I hate it. It's the worst part of the year. I'm trying to watch some football, and you'll see the same commercial over and over again. And now we have, since Peyton Manning retired, we have to see 100 Peyton Manning commercials. So literally, I'm watching a game, and on a commercial break, I see 1 or 2 presidential put-downs and 2 Peyton Manning commercials, and then back to the game. And that's just pretty much rinse and repeat. I even saw a Peyton Manning commercial making fun of his other commercials. For that, I'm not even going to buy any category, any product, category, whatever. It doesn't even matter. They support Peyton Manning and have a commercial of him because it's overkill. I'm not buying that product, even if it's something that I need. I'm not going to buy it. So, but back to that, you got the presidential commercials in full effect, and you also have the presidential debates. So these will be interesting because they'll be dissected, and you'll see it come up across a bunch of different areas. But the presidential debates is our last trend for the week. Now, I'm going to move on into our next category. First this week, I'm going to talk about gaming. I haven't actually been gaming that much lately, trying to get the podcast off the ground and some other things. But I have been keeping an eye on the Xbox One. Over the summer, they announced that they were going to put Windows 10, the full operating system, on the Xbox One. And that's something that I have a keen interest in. I've never owned any of the Xbox consoles. So I don't have any first-hand experience, positive or negative, on the Xbox. But if they do draw out the full Windows 10, it is something that would be intriguing to me, because you'll have a full computer operating system at your fingertips in a gaming console. So you could have a very simplistic living room, which is something that I like. Just a TV, you have a gaming console. The gaming console handles most of your media. You can throw DVDs in, Blu-rays. I'm not sure if the Xbox handles Blu-rays though, but I do have a PlayStation 4 that handles those. Then you can do your gaming. A lot of the games, I don't game 5 hours a day, so I don't only play certain games that I like. I don't play games that are the popular ones or anything like that. So the games, I don't think will affect me if the Xbox comes out with Windows 10. What I do have an interest in is third-party apps, if they're going to limit them on the Xbox. Because Windows 10, you can install any program you want. It's like your own operating system. So if they roll out Windows 10 for the Xbox One, I would be interested to see if they let you install third-party applications down the road. One that would be pretty big would be Steam. If you're a gamer, you know what I'm talking about. Steam is a Windows library for all of your games. It's a cloud storage where you can download games, and they're cross-compatible. So if you buy a game, let's say I buy Doom, the original Doom, I think that's on there, I could be wrong. But if you buy Doom and you have a PC, and later on you get a Mac, you can download the same game on Mac. You don't have to buy it again. You can even, let's say you want to try out Linux operating system, you can go ahead and install that, download Steam, install the games you already bought. You don't have to buy them again. So it's a pretty good ecosystem, and they have a lot of gaming sales, which is great because you can get games for very cheap. I'm talking like Halloween sale might be coming up. Last year on Halloween sale, I got maybe 10 games for 99 cents, like very cheap. And a lot of them are old games, but they're games that I'm interested in. And currently I only have a Mac laptop, and my PC died a few months ago. So I could either get a PC to play my PC only games, and that's the limitation of Steam. It's up to the developer, so they would have to have the game cross-compatible. It's not something that Steam automatically does. So if you buy a game that's PC only, unfortunately you can't play it on the Mac. It has to be supported by that operating system. But a lot of the games are cross-compatible. When you go to buy, it shows you a little operating system icon that you can look at and see, like, hey, yeah, that's my operating system, and go with that. and download it on all of them at once. So if Xbox goes ahead and opens this up, and I'm not saying that it has to compete with the Xbox ecosystem for games, it's something that if they open it up, yeah, they're going to have competition, but they could limit it where maybe they have an agreement with Steam where it is, if the game is sold in the Xbox One store, then it can't be carried in the Steam store for the Xbox version. They could do the same thing on the Steam where it just has an Xbox symbol whenever you buy a game, so that you know if you're going to buy a game that you can play it in the Xbox store. It's something that I think would be beneficial to both companies. I know they're seen as competitors because Xbox now has their Xbox Store app built into Windows 10. You actually can't remove it. I do have a test Windows 10 computer at work that I play around with on to test certain programs I wrote because I'm a developer. But I go in and I see that Steam or Xbox is in there. I try to delete it, the first thing I do, and of course I can't delete it natively. And since it's only a test machine, I like to try to keep it as vanilla as possible for my test environment. I don't like to remove packages that can't be removed. So I did notice that is now built in. And so I'd imagine that they're going to try to sell games and have them go back and forth between the Xbox and your PC. So you can technically own both. Some people like gaming only on PC because they can control the environment and they can have the better graphics, the better processors, run it in full 4K. You can even do the 3D things. I had an Oculus Rift for a while for testing that lets you play games on Steam in 3D. Very cool, even before it was supported, and now you have all these other game developers. I know PlayStation just announced that they're going to have their own 3D, but I was ahead of the curve on that one, and I think that's something that would be great down the line. You buy a product once, you can play it on any system. I don't like how you have to keep buying games over and over again. And that's it for gaming for this week. I'll end my rant. I'll probably follow up on that again. Next, we're going to talk about music. For music this week, talking about ZZ Top. I went to see ZZ Top play a few weeks ago. Now, I don't remember the exact date, but normally I like to go to a bunch of different concerts. Myself, I play guitar and I play bass guitar, and I also was a drummer in like the middle school band. So I started on drums and worked my way to different instruments as I played in different bands. So I like to go out and see live music. And I went to Carolina Rebellion back in May, and ZZ Top was supposed to headline, I believe, on Friday. And one of their members got hurt right before the concert, so they had to drop out. So I was pretty bummed that I didn't get to see them. And just perusing their website to see if they had gotten back, I saw that they were touring this fall, which was a surprise to me because no major outlets picked it up. I listen to some radio, but not a lot of the mainstream like hip hop stuff. So I would have came across if there was a rock concert. But I did go see ZZ Top. I did find it. It was very small. Well, I guess it's not a small venue, but it was kind of laid back. There was no parking fees. It was actually pretty cool. So that was something that really caught my eye. No parking fees. It was easy to get in and out. And the cool thing with this venue was, and it's the Coca Amphitheater, I believe, in Cary, North Carolina. But they had food trucks come in, so you didn't have to buy the overpriced beer and concert venue food. They had food trucks come in with their own beer, a brewing truck, I believe. So that was pretty cool. So you, as a concert goer, now you have all these people jacking up prices, just like sporting events, and different games like that. So now going out and seeing a live concert is actually pretty neat. Whenever they bring in a little bit of culture, a little bit of laid back, you get to see a little bit of the area, and it's not so cut and dry like other venues where you go in, it's the same exact thing. You know where you are at any venue across the country, just based on the same layout, or like Live Nation owns the concerts, because that's what happens. You get Live Nation come in and they own a bunch of the venues, so they're all operated the same, and you get a familiar feel, but you don't get the personality of the area or the region. And with ZZ Top, they were a good concert. I enjoyed seeing them. Government Mule was the opener, which is a good band, so it's a nice relaxing night. The venue let me bring in my own chair for free. A lot of places they try to make you rent them, which is a ripoff. But brought my own chair. I just sat back, got to relax, and check out a pretty cool band. ZZ Top, their show, you could tell that they were hurting. Either, I don't know if it was due to the injury or just because they're so old, but they played their songs a little bit slow. Any musician would know, like the tempo was just a half step off. So, but it was a good show overall, and they did put on most of their classics, and they did play them well without really any mistakes or anything. And to follow that up, the other concert I saw recently was AC/DC with Axl Rose, and that was a surprise because AC/DC played a long set, and Axl, he sounded great. He fit in with the band. He was a little out of shape, which surprised me because seeing like the things on like that were trending on Twitter, he was trying to get pictures of him being overweight off the internet. He was suing Google or someone to take his pictures down. But then he showed up and he wasn't even in shape anyway. So I don't get the big deal. But he sounded great. And AC/DC, another band that was pretty old, but they were loud, and they were pretty much spot on with the rest of their show. So that's a good concert. So if you see any of those bands coming around, I know they're a little bit older, I would advise checking them out. And that's it for music for this week. I'm going to follow that up with movies. Now, I saw 2 movies recently. The first one is X-Men Apocalypse. X-Men Apocalypse was pretty good. I was a fan of X-Men growing up, a big fan of the cartoon. I didn't read the comic book so much, and so when you read reviews, you see people that, oh, this doesn't follow the comics or anything like that. But whenever you get into the movie, as a fan that didn't read the comics or don't have a connection, you're going to have a different opinion. And it seems like people who read the comics are always let down. At least that's from my perspective. But you can have fun. Go to see this movie. It's very fast-paced, action-wise. I think something that the X-Men movies have that the other superhero movies don't is a large cast, like a very large cast. Because I don't want to leave out like some of the other ones, like the Avengers. There's 5 guys, even if 5-6 people. That's it. You can throw other superheroes in, introduce them. But X-Men, there are so many that come in and out and even cross over with some of the other superhero movies. So they have a unique problem whenever they're trying to write the scripts. How do all these movies tie in? They even have like individual cast spin-offs, like Wolverine has his own movie. I think there's supposed to be a Gambit one coming out, but he hasn't even appeared in any of the other movies since, I believe, that Wolverine one, the first one. So, but the movie overall was pretty good. It was a little bit better than I expected. Normally, whenever you see there's going to be one superhero that's more powerful than the others, it's just going to be like a long battle where they have to use some gimmick or something to take them down. But I did like the story for that movie, so I advise checking it out. I don't want to give too much away. I hate whenever someone reviews or talks about a movie and they just give a play-by-play of what happens. So I'll try not to do that here. Just give some topics. I might dive into some movies, but for now, we'll leave it as is. Now, the second movie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, I was a little disappointed with that one. I just don't like the way they look. I can't get over it. They're supposed to be teenage turtles. I know it doesn't make any sense if you don't know what I'm talking about or you're not a fan of the series or the comics. But if you watch any of these new movies, this one and the other one, I believe Michael Bay did them. I could be wrong. but the turtles are way bigger than humans. But if you go back to the cartoon or the comic book, the turtles are actually pretty small. I want to say they're like 5 foot tall. So they have to be ninjas to fight humans and other creatures or whatever, as outlandish as it may be. But in these new movies, they're bigger than cars. They're flying in the planes, jumping on cars, blowing up, but it doesn't make any sense to the actual character. And that's what I don't understand. I get that some kids might be into it. They're trying to appeal to different people, but even the toys, there's no way the toys can sell because they're not cute. Like, kids want something that's cute and cuddly, or something that they can relate to. They're not going to relate to these big green hulking monsters. Even like the Hulk, they sell Hulk hands so you don't have to see his face. So the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they should be teenage. They should be small turtles, friendly turtles, not these huge green hulking monsters. But I digress. That's it. I'll leave it at that. The movie itself, I guess, was okay. Some of the stories, I know, fitting in with the comics, I did read the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics. I don't want to be that guy when I just said it about X-Men. The following the story, it's actually pretty close to what I expected story-wise, based on the other series and the comics. So if you're a fan, go see it. If you support it, maybe they'll come out with another one. I'm sure they'll have to reboot it eventually and maybe just redesign it. But I mean, I have a daughter, so she's going to want to see turtles that she can relate to. And I just don't see her wanting to watch a Turtles movie where the turtles are big, green, scary monsters. But that's just me. Now, moving on to the next category, we'll talk about shows. I don't want to say television shows because I don't really watch a lot of television shows. And actually, I guess you're still watching them on the television. But nowadays with streaming, we'll just leave it as shows. You'll know what I'm talking about. They can be shows even on YouTube, anything that I find that I'm watching. The show that I'm watching now is called Longmire. It is on Netflix. It used to be on A&E when I barely had cable a few years ago. Living at my first apartment, they gave me like a limited cable for free. So I had like certain channels. So I had to watch like TV shows that weren't like the popular ones, or like I didn't have HBO at the time. So I started watching this show called Longmire, which was very well received, and it was sort of underground, but it's very interesting. It's about a sheriff. He's out in Wyoming, I think. He's out western part of the United States, and he's trying to solve a crime, and it ties into the murder of his wife. And the first couple seasons follows that storyline. And then for some reason, A&E canceled it, which doesn't make any sense because it was like their highest rated show, I believe, at that point. And so then they also had like it was their highest rated drama. But then at the same time, they were also, I believe they're the ones that do Duck Dynasty. I could be wrong. But I believe that they wanted to go more in that direction because it costs less to just have a bunch of people pretend that it's a reality TV show, I guess. I don't know. But they let the show down. They let it go down. They canceled it. And I'm glad that Netflix picked it up because it's a pretty good show and it gives a change of pace to Netflix's other shows where they're just trying to do comedy. But it's a drama. If you got rid of your cable, you cut the cord, you don't have over the air. I know some people can't get like certain channels, and you're into like, it's a crime drama. So he's a sheriff, so he's solving crimes, but he's going out, and they live near an Indian reservation. So there's a cool storyline with that. It involves a casino. The Indians are trying to prevent this casino from going up. It goes up anyway, and there's a vigilante in the Indian community that's going out and he's solving crimes. It's sort of like a superhero underground, and they're trying to find out who that is throughout the whole series. But season 5 just started. I just started watching it. If you're looking for a TV show, you probably never heard of it because it hasn't been talked about a lot, but I recommend checking it out. All right, and our next category is technology. I'm going to go back through a couple weeks here and talk about the release of iOS 10. If you have an Apple phone, iPhone, or an iPad, you might have saw the software release update. Well, software 10.2, I believe, 10.02 just came out because there were some bugs with the first release. I haven't got my hands on too much with the 10.02 since I updated it. But I will say that there's some quirks with this update that I don't really like. It's harder to get into my phone. I have to do the fingerprint scanner and then click a button. I mean, maybe it'll take me just a while to get used to it, but I'm used to just automatically swiping my finger and being able to get in my phone right away. If I need to take a picture quick, it's a lot tougher. And I can see, like, if you're going to take a picture of someone who's not ready, like you see someone like, hey, you want to take a picture real quick? It's harder to get in your phone, which I don't understand. I mean, I guess there's a way you can swipe into it to take a picture, but I don't know. I don't really get too much into it. I delete almost all the apps that are stored, which is a big lifesaver. And I'm so glad if you haven't updated, that is one of the reasons to update. You can now remove the stock apps that come with iOS 10. So now you don't have to have like their notes, their keeper. There's like a bunch of them that come with the phone that you probably never use. There are some like Find My iPhone you can't remove, but I think that's for security. And then I'm trying to think like the messages maybe, and some of the other ones that you cannot remove from the phone itself. But I will say that it is a big saver whenever you don't have all these other apps that you don't use. And you might think, well, I don't use them, so it's not running in the background. Like, yeah, most of the time from an operating system perspective, if it's tied into your system, it is running. You just don't know it. Go into your computer once and open up your running programs. How many of those programs or processes did you actually open? Because you're probably running a bunch that you didn't even remember opening, or you probably don't even need. So at least they're starting to get that right. And voila, you know what happened whenever you can remove all these extra apps? The battery life improved. Wow. I knew that was going to happen all along. I think most people did. They're just starting to get around to it. Like, hey, maybe we should just delete these apps that no one uses. And with that, they released, if you use a Mac, I have a MacBook, they released OS X 10.12 or something. I don't know their numbering system, but it's tag name Sierra, I believe. And that's a disappointment too, because when I updated it messed up like some of the permissions on my programs. And now, like, if I'm using certain programs, like if I open up Steam and I try to use like the Mac toolbar, like to hit the file at the very top, the menu bar, that doesn't work for some of the programs. And it's not just one, it's not just Steam. There are a couple of them that if you try to use one of the menu items in your taskbar, that it crashes. I did notice that a couple apps automatically had updates later that day that I updated my operating system, and they fixed the menu problem. So they must have changed something, and they either didn't let developers know in time, because most of my programs are crashing, and now I have only a few left. I believe Firefox is one. I haven't tested Steam in a couple days. But if you try to like go up to see your history in Firefox now, it crashes every time. So they need to get that fixed out, or they should have just gave developers a heads up, because obviously they changed something on their end. But that's one of the reasons why you should probably wait a few days if you are going to upgrade and you don't know what you're doing. I always upgrade right away because I figure as a developer, I can kind of debug and see if some of my own stuff is working or if it causes problems in any of my own stuff. So that's it for my mini rant on technology for this week. But the Apple updates, some of them are good. The iOS 10, get rid of your apps. Sierra, not so good. Hold off on that one. And they still won't let you remove the embedded apps on Sierra. And they need to make that change too, because the same apps, reminders and notes and other things that I don't use because I use Google, they need to let me remove them, because then my laptop battery will last a lot longer. So here's to hoping that that happens. And now my last category each week will be sports. And the last main category, I'll try to follow that up maybe sometimes with some rants. I don't have any this week. Nothing really got into me to get me mad enough. But sports, I guess it will kind of start. The first thing, José Fernández died on Sunday. If you don't know who he was a young pitcher for the Miami Marlins, maybe? I think they're Miami. They used to be the Florida Marlins. So a young pitcher for the Miami Marlins. He was 24 years old. And some new details came out where he was with two other guys. They were speeding at top speed in their boat towards shore, and they hit some rocks, and it flipped over. And unfortunately, they landed in the rocks, and they didn't drown. So he died on Sunday morning, or maybe it was Saturday night. They don't know the actual time because they found him, I think, 3 a.m. Sunday morning. So the Miami Marlins canceled their game on Sunday to grieve him, and they put a nice little memorial on the mound for him. So that's a little tragedy that happened. Very surprising, and you never want to see any news like that come across. And last topic, college football. Going in, not too many upsets over the weekend. Wisconsin came in and laid some wood to Michigan State. Auburn won on a crazy time gaffe by LSU. And, of course, LSU has fired their head coach. And this is crazy because it's like 2 or 3 weeks in. I think it's 3 weeks into the season. Could be 4. I don't know what week it is. But they fired their coach. That doesn't make any sense because it's only a few weeks into the season. They had a chance to fire him last year. I think the AD wanted to. The president talked him into keeping him around. But now you have players in the middle of the season. I think I saw that their recruiting class was ranked number 4. And so now maybe they thought if they fired him now, they could keep some of the recruiting class. But I don't see how that will happen. It will be interesting to see because Alabama has been stacking coaches, stashing them on their staff somewhere in like an administrative position. So I wonder if someone will pick up Les Miles, who is LSU's coach, in that capacity, or if he's going to hold out and wait to see if he can get a head coaching job somewhere else. And LSU, of course, is now reaching out to other coaches. I believe they contacted Tom Herman from Houston, which is another embarrassment because he's in the middle of coaching a top 10 team, and now LSU is going to be poaching him. How does that deal with his players now? So hopefully he doesn't start to field those calls and neglect his current team, but that's a team to watch out for. If that is happening, if he is interviewing, you might want to watch out. He might have an upset coming for Houston, so keep an eye on their lines. And, of course, after Notre Dame lost to Duke, they also fired their defensive coordinator. So now there's already turmoil starting in college football. Notre Dame, they're eliminated from the playoffs. And LSU, pretty much same thing happened. I guess they only have one loss in the SEC. Their other one was to the Wisconsin team I mentioned earlier. And I don't see how they are going to. This isn't going to turn out well for them. I think Les Miles had like a 70% or above winning percentage. He won the SEC twice, and he won a national championship. There aren't that many teams that actually win a national championship. And before he got there, I know they had Nick Saban, who I believe won one. If not, he was close and he had an undefeated season. I can't remember. But before that, I don't think LSU had this level of success. So I don't understand their train of thought there, what the logic is behind that and where they're going to go with it. But that's it for today's podcast. If you like what you hear, tell your friends. Make sure you subscribe. And I don't have any rants for today to finish off the podcast. But come back next week and we'll chat on some topics again. You have been listening to Socially Numb, and I am Richie Leahy.